If Cyrus's kids ever watch this one day, what do you want them to know about their dad?
Everything he did for them. Being out there was for them. It was, for a lot of us, the best way to support our families, the way we think they deserve to be supported.
I'm back on the road now, and I ain't got the time to sit and wait for your decisions. Gotta make them tonight. Please forgive me. Got one hell of a drive. The boys are waiting and the boss is slaving me the rest of my life. You ain't the first, sure ain't the last. Take off late when I go back on the road now, and I ain't got the time to sit and wait for your decisions. Gotta make them tonight. Your love's like a time bomb ticking down on me, so it's best to go and hit the road.
This was Cyrus's last Father's Day that we got to spend with him before the accident, and we were out of town with him. He was actually working on the tower that the accident happened at.
Did you ever worry about him when he'd be out on the road?
Absolutely not. Never. Like, I completely trusted him in what he was doing and his decisions and choices he was making when he was on towers, around towers, or even, managing the crews out there. He was a really, really good father. And when it came to the kids and me and him, it just felt so balanced. Everything felt very 50-50 in our relationship, as in, we were a team. Cyrus was a very hard worker and, never went without a job and did very well at providing for me and the kids.
He's one of those dudes that would get off of work, go grab something to eat, pitch a hammock right there on the beach, river, woods, wherever he was at, on site sometimes, and camp out with the dog and show up 5 minutes early for work, sandy still, just crust in his eyes. He really just kind of lived in all moments.
You got snow on your face, Charlie. Not caring today? What are you doing, Charlie?
So this is Charlie. This is Cyrus's dog. He went everywhere with Cyrus, was always out of town with them, traveled with them. He's almost 10 years old now.
He come from a whole family of broadcast hands. His dad was a tower hand. His brother, he grew up in it. As a little kid, he was on broadcast tower sites. And so even though he was a few years younger than me, he really took me under his wing career-wise and showed me how to function and all the little tricks that made our job so much easier. He was going through a lot of personal changes in his career, in his personal relationships at home, a lot of really big changes at the time, and health problems as well.
So on September 17th, like early in the morning, he was experiencing, a lot of discomfort in his neck and shoulder area, and was just trying to manage between, heating pad, hot shower, things like that. But it got so bad that he ended up driving himself to the hospital and ended up being put in surgery before me and his mom could even make it up there. And the hospital's probably about a 10-minute drive from her house because he was having a massive heart attack. So if he wouldn't have made it up there, he wouldn't have made it. Like, we were that close to losing him.
another angle of what he was going through was he had reached a point, and his family stage had reached a point to where having him on the road wasn't viable, and it made him not want to be on the road. You know, he just wanted to be at home with his kids.
You guys would travel with Sirous on the road, the whole family?
Every chance we got, we pretty much went. Over the span of the years we were together, there were times where he did mention and kind of, you know, put reality into check for me that, hey, you know, this is something that, you know, nobody's safe from. Even I could die doing this job.
It was a pretty good group of hands. There was not a lot of us there to be doing what we were doing, in my opinion. We'd been there for, I don't know, like 9 months or something. We'd done a bunch of other scopes of work and then began changing the guy wires from the bottom up. I don't remember for sure. I want to say it was a 14 to 1600 foot broadcast television and radio tower in Robertsdale, Alabama. The pick was like 27,000 pounds, if I remember right. And we had changed every other guy wire up the entire tower, including the other 2 top wires.
This will kind of give a basic idea of the mechanics of what happened. So you've got your tower structure at the base of the tower here. You've got a heel block with cable coming off to a winch machine. And then that cable goes up to the top of the tower to a block. And so we were in a 2-part. That means the cable comes out and your block's here, so you ride in the belly of a cable that's terminated, and it gives you twice the capability of what you can lift.
We've got our load line in a 2-part, which means we have a moving block with a headache ball on it for counterweight. We married it with about 20 foot of headroom on that wire. And that way when we get up to where the top of that wire starts to meet the rigging, we can untie it and rig to it separately. So that 20 foot or so is manageable by hand and ropes and stuff. Once we got up there close, we start untying that 20 foot of headroom, and we rig to it with a rope and a block. And Sirous is inside the tower on the ladder, and he's rigged to the other side of that rope.
So we were way up here with this situation with our headache ball and our 2-part. We were up here, and I was hooked into that pair ring, walking it up the face of the tower so it didn't get hung up. And then once we untied all of that, we plugged a rope up to the end of it. It went through another rope block, and there's a climbing ladder inside of the tower right here. So Sirous was on that climbing ladder, hooked to that 20 foot of headroom.
So now he's got that whole 20 foot. He owns that whole 20 foot of new guy wire that we're installing above the rigging.
So now we're married right here at the block with a load choker the same diameter as the guy wire. And we have cable clips that marry that together so that when we get up here, we can get the end of it plugged into the lug right here without a bunch of resistance and fight. Well, it was those cable clips that married it at the choker right here that allowed that 20 foot to zip through until it collided and dead-ended. And as that happened, all of this was hauling ass until it terminated at the crown block.
Cable has a tendency to stretch. When you have a 2 5/8 diameter and you put 27,000 pounds on it, you start to come in millimeters on that, and it affects those cable clips that are marrying it to that choker. Looking back and knowing what I know now, we should have never had a live man on that 20 foot of headroom. It saddens me, and I take comfort that Sirous was the one with the experience that made the decisions. He was the top hand that put everybody where they were at, and he put himself in the most vulnerable spot. And fortunately, none of us have to live with being the person that put him there. He was the kind of leader that was going to take the rough spot or the dangerous spot, you know, because there's always a spot that's, for one reason or the next, whether it's comfort or safety, there's always a spot that's less desirable than another. And he always took that spot. So I don't remember how far from the top of the tower I was, but not very. I want to say I was probably about 40 or 50 feet from the top of the tower. And that was right around the point where we started to untie and rig Sirous to that 20 foot of headroom. Well, as we did all that and we started to get up on everything, the cable clips failed. And that 20 foot of guy wire came zipping through the connection point where it was married at that choker. So fast and so violent that none of us had any clue what was going on. When you have 27,000 pounds in a two-part and all of a sudden you just instantly let that weight off, that rigging jumped upward, hauled ass upward until everything dead-ended. So as fast as it was dragging me up the face of the tower, it was dragging him up the inside of the tower as well on that rope, on that 20 foot of headroom. I was being drug up the tower so fast, the only thing that made sense to me was that I was being drugged down the tower, because that's where shit falls. Shit goes down, it doesn't go up. It was really fast and really violent, and then I woke up. Apparently what had happened was as all that weight was coming up, and it drugged me up until the socket dead ended. And when the socket dead ended, it created quite the explosion, really quite the rigging explosion. The guys on the ground that were on the machines, they thought the tower was going to come down. So they were running up the guy path to get away from the tower. My friend Montana, good buddy of mine, he was on the tower, and he was just kind of looking out for Sirous's rigging, looking out for my rigging, and just kind of watching everything as it goes. So when all that happened, it just all blew up in his face. He just watched it all go. And Sirous got zipped up into his rope block. So when he collided with that block and fell back down the climbing face, he just so happened to fall into the end of that rope, and that's what kept him from continuing to fall down the tower. Montana thought that we both hit the dirt because he watched Sirous fall past him. So when I woke up, the grillion that I was hanging in, that I was connected to the load line on, that exploded, and I was hanging in the inners of that rope. It was a pretty good ride. It ripped the soles off one of my boots. It ripped a lot of my clothes off. It's burnt freckles off my shoulders and shit permanently. And I guess I was probably knocked out for a couple minutes because Montana thought that both of us had fallen to the ground. And when I woke up and started making noise, he realized I was there, and he was probably about 30 or 40 feet under me. So he climbed up, and he helped me get off of the load line and get onto the tower. All the safeties in my harness and stuff were all blown out. The first thing we did was we climbed down to Sirous. He was a ways down. There was a pretty long rope. He was probably about 80 or 90 feet under us, and we climbed down to him, and we checked his pulse immediately, and he didn't have one at all. He was at that point immediately, but we were hopeful, and we knew what we were supposed to do. So Montana had to help me get Sirous, and we propped him up on a horizontal strut in a corner at a gusset. So we used rope lashings to tie him upright to the leg of the tower. And so we got him situated right there, and again, we checked his pulse, and still no pulse, of course. And then came the point where we couldn't get him off of the tower until we came down and hooked up to a man basket and got the man basket back up there. When we called 911, we told them that a rescue was in progress like we're supposed to, and we should have never told them that we knew that he was deceased, because it changed everything from a live rescue mission to a very drawn out recovery mission. And they halted our attempts to get his body off of the tower by about 6 hours while they waited for people to show up. High altitude specialty rescuers that had absolutely no idea how to even begin to get there, let alone to get him off the tower. So now we, in the moment, after everything that just happened, had to train these high specialty rescue experts on how the fuck we're gonna get him off the tower. So basically, these disrespectful fuckers are taking selfies in the man basket on the way up the tower because they've never been up that high. Meanwhile, there's news outlets flying around in helicopters taking pictures of Sirus's body on the tower that his family had to witness later on, when we could have had him cleaned off of that tower as quick as it took to get back up there. And that's what should have happened. But it's not what happened.
I had went to his mom's house, and it was kind of the meeting grounds for everyone, and his brothers and everyone kind of met up there. And shortly after, a police car pulled up and did confirm, obviously, that, he had passed away. We all sat down as a family over at my brother-in-law's and, broke the news to the kids. And I mean, they were both devastated. They were crying. They were upset. We did want to have his body transferred to Texas, and we did want to be able to see him before having him cremated. That was a big thing for me and his mom. It seemed like a nightmare trying to get his body transferred from Alabama to Texas. I want to say, if I can remember correctly, it was at least 4 or 5 days by the time they got his body to Texas and we were able to go and see it. It was very hard for his mom, especially. For me, I definitely disassociated through that. It was so bad that we could only view, from his head down to right here. My daughter, she understood a lot more than Zeppelin did. For some reason, she always kind of felt like it was possibly intentional. She didn't understand, why didn't the other guys do something? She would ask me questions regarding things like that. She would say things like she thought that they did it on purpose. How do I tell a child that, these guys surrounding him would never hurt your dad, never do your dad wrong, things like that, and try to explain, the reality of the situation and what happened that day and what went wrong and why.
You had mentioned it took you a few days to kind of even understand what had happened.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about, situations like that is I think your brain sometimes has a tendency to really fog shit over, and going right back to work the next day, I don't think that really helped a lot. I think it was important to do. I had the option. I didn't, no one was demanding I be there. It's kind of one of those fall off the horse situations where it feels important to do that and just rip the Band-Aid off. The tower was sitting in a temporary wire, so at this point, the status of the tower is so vulnerable that even OSHA won't shut down the job site right after a fresh fatality until we get that permanent guy wire back up, because more people's lives were at risk. And of course, they had OSHA there within a few hours to get everybody's stories documented and everything, and they didn't even know what a choker was. They didn't know what a shackle was. I don't know how they could begin to investigate anything with that amount of ignorance, but they did. They came and they got their They got their stories documented.
Did OSHA's findings match what you experienced?
Well, no. And how could it? How could it ever? When you show up to investigate something, how could you ever begin and you don't even know what the most simple components of the entire situation are? I think a guy that investigates deaths for a living, he should be able to accomplish that. He just took statements.
Do you remember the last conversation you had with Sirous?
I do. I do. Have you ever heard of a tower angel? I hadn't. 30 minutes before that accident happened, I've been climbing towers for over 16 years and I've seen it 3 times my whole life. A circular rainbow, sometimes in the right cloudy conditions, will encapsulate your shadow on the clouds. And I was like, wow, dude, that's fucking cool. Look at that. And I took a picture and we stopped. He took a picture. It was the last picture he ever took. And he said, yeah, man, that's a tower angel. They protect us. It was our last idle point before we were really involved with the actual hoisting of the wire. If we're getting really sentimental and superstitious about it, it was kind of a foresight on the protection that I had in the rigging failure that in all rights probably should have killed me. No one really understands how someone can get drug up the face of the tower with a 900-pound headache ball with 27,000 pounds of force and live through it with bumps and bruises. It's nothing really short of a miracle, honestly.
Now, how did the company respond immediately after?
They were sending out lawyers and corporate guys out immediately to meet with us about what we were going to talk about with who and how.
So nobody reached out to you to explain what happened?
Absolutely not. No. From what I remember, I know the company reached out to me via email, I believe the very next day, as far as, attorneys being involved, but we weren't able to clearly know what had happened that day. Was there a chance that he could have made it at all if he had gotten down to the ground sooner? Not being able to speak to any of those people or them not want to speak to us, it definitely felt like a great divide in a sense, kind of mind-blowing, honestly. Just given how, much of his time, energy, effort, his life was spent doing what he did. It wasn't just a job, it's a lifestyle. Those towers got more time with him to a degree than we did.
So you guys had a plan in place, obviously, before this hoist of this final guy wire you guys were installing. Did everyone understand the plan? I mean, did anyone have any concerns about this plan?
Some of us should have had some concerns. That's one of my biggest problems with the accident, looking back on it, is I trusted Sirous more than I should have. Not because he was untrustworthy, that's not what I mean, but there should never be that amount of blind trust in anything that you're doing that has that amount of risk behind it. And I think that was a pivotal moment in my career, was realizing the gravity of not looking around and thinking about the mechanics of everything. And if you don't have any questions, you should probably come up with some. Well, that was the first time I'd ever changed guy wires of that size.
So do you want to talk about the situation with the cable clips?
Yeah, and some people probably aren't going to like me that much when I do, but I'm no stranger to that. I don't mind. It needs to be put out there because it's important. Those were pretty large Crosbys, pretty large cable clips. And like I said, we're all pretty large guys. Every one of us is over 250 pounds. And basically, we weren't given like a foot-pound spec. We were given, get up on that thing as much as you can get up on that thing, and you'll know you got it. And then, of course, make your pick, hold your pick, and get up on it again. And we did that. And it worked twice. And the third time it didn't. We were right on the coast, so there's large tools and rigging available. There's not always in some parts of the country. But we were able to track down, I want to say it was like a 4-foot handled or even 5-foot handled 1-inch drive ratchet. One guy would hold the socket on the cable clip and the other guy would stand on it. And so we had a grown 260, 270 something pound man jumping on the end of the cheater pipe at the end of this 5-foot ratchet to get them until we just couldn't get them anymore. Well, after the accident, people were all of a sudden a little more concerned with what that spec actually was. And the only way to get a spec with torque is a torque wrench. I think it was like a $5,000 or $6,000 torque wrench that it took, and we didn't have it for the entire rest of the job, but it showed up after the accident. And after seeing what it took to trigger that torque wrench at spec, it was a lot. And so the last one that we tightened with that regular ratchet, it just wasn't tight enough. It's all over nuts that just weren't quite tight enough.
It's weird thinking that, I know somebody and love somebody that they won't ever get the chance to know like that. They'll remember that, oh, my dad passed away at a young age, and then they're gonna remember like all the years after just how devastating it's almost been. Just watching like me try to recover from this. And just like how much my grief has like impacted all three of us together in our daily lives and what that has looked like for them. And I hope they're like able to understand that when they get older. And it not be that they think like, oh, I'm lazy or incapable or something, but just the fact that something like this could like really destroy you in ways that you did not even know was possible.
How has this incident changed your life?
Like I talked about earlier, when you are so used to trusting your seniors and you're so used to trusting the process that people have been using for years that you don't stop to question the mechanics of things, that's a problem for me, and it's something that I've never made the mistake of doing again. In my industry, I may have a reputation for being an asshole and a smart ass and all kinds of things, but I do not have a reputation for being unsafe. I want to make sure that everything's right. And a lot of tower companies don't appreciate that outlook. They don't want the resistance of their plan, or they don't want the questioning of their plan even. You're never gonna have full trust in all the answers. And so sometimes you're just gonna be scared, or you're just gonna refuse to do it. Those are the two options. And so I've found myself turning down jobs and positions that I wouldn't have previously because I just don't have the trust. As long as there's someone that's willing to be pressured and will cave, they'll keep pressuring. The more people that use their common sense and hold these companies responsible, the less opportunity they have to continue to put people in those positions. It's like scabs and protesters. As long as there's scabs willing to come in and do the work that the normal workers don't want to do for a reason, those normal workers and that workforce and that job position is always going to be exploited. But people have to stick together, and they have to stick to their guns at what they know is right. As long as there's people that are willing to sidestep that, it's a hazard for everybody involved, except for the company that's putting the pressure on. These fucking people don't care about you. You're dispensable. And when things get ugly and accidents happen, they're not looking to make anything right. They're looking to pass liability. And they'll use any piece of your own private life or their own legal loopholes that they could possibly find to make sure that at the end of the day, everything just stifles out quietly and you cost as least amount of money to the company as possible. Don't let these fucking company owners talk you into doing something that you know might not go well. They'll try and they'll try and they'll try, and the more people that use common sense to put up resistance where it's necessary, the less people are going to die.
Ain't no reason on asking why. Prayer hands for a jubilee at a small church in July.
Oh, it's a double rainbow,
Gotta let it go, baby. Sometimes we all just need release.
all the way around the tower.
Ain't a fighter here across the world except you who can tame the beast. Honey, are there monsters that like to hide under your sheets? Making love with your demons, mama, 'cause the gun's far from your reach. Where your daddy sees an angel, I saw a heart broke covered in black. Get your hair untangled, can I heal those concrete cracks? I can see you falling down.